wife was out in the garden planting stuff and.
7 o'clock.
Okay, it's 7 o'clock. A meeting of the Finance Committee is held today on Wednesday, September 21st, 2022 at 7 p.m. in the Aldermanic Chamber. Mr. Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Sure. Mayor Donchis.
Not here.
Alderman Clee.
Here?
Alderman Como.
I am here. I am on Zoom because I'm traveling for business, and I am alone in the room.
Alderman Govea.
Here.
Alderman Clemens is here. Alderwoman Timmons.
Here.
Alderman Moran.
Is not here.
Also in attendance is Alderman Tebow, Alderman Wilshire, Alderman Sullivan is online, Alderman Jettie, and Alderman Dowd. Also, John Griffin, CFO, Cheryl Linder, Treasury Management Officer, Kim Kleiner, Administrative Services Director, Amy Gerard, Purchasing Manager, and Tim Cummings, Economic Development Director.
I don't think Mr. Griffin is
Oh,
with us. CFO Griffin
okay.
is with us. We'll start with public comment. Please come up to the microphone, give your name, address, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Lori Ortolano, 41 Berkeley Street. I don't know if you're going to be discussing the project relative to the downtown riverfront implementation because it's communication here. But I was out last night and listened to a presentation on that. One of the things I addressed was my concerns with cost, and it was explained that there's really been no change in cost, but I did locate a set of minutes where a presentation was given to your board recently that said the costs on this project are going up, and that was the report. So I anticipated that the costs on the project were going up. So I would like to understand what that meant and what we are addressing with those costs. This bond has not been sold. I looked into that today, and I really feel that this project shouldn't be taken on at this point in time. And the second input, I'll be addressing the exemptions for senior citizens as a reason why we should take on this project and what's going on economically with people. But I'm also really concerned, and I'd like to get an answer to who's going to serve as the contractor in the city to do the oversight on this project between H.L. Turner and the other contractors that are going to do this now that the overall contract manager is left. And I think I would like to understand who that person is, what that responsibility entails, and what the workload of that contract oversight is for this city. Will we be hiring a position? Do we have somebody in mind? Because that becomes an issue, a manpower issue here, which I think is significant. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else from the public that wishes to speak? Seeing none, communications?
Okay, from Tim Cummings, Economic Development Director, regarding communication approval and place on file for a contract for professional services related to the Nashua Downtown Riverfront Implementation Project for VHB Incorporated. And I would move to place on file and approve the final design phase of the Riverfront project with VHB Inc. in an amount not to exceed $445,400. Funding will be through the TIF account created to implement the Downtown Riverfront project.
We will have to take a roll call on that because Alderman Como is online. Mr. Cummings, Director Cummings, did you want to speak to that at all, or?
Happy to.
Okay.
So good evening, ladies and gentlemen. For the record, Tim Cummings, Director of Economic Development. The communication before you this evening is for a final design contract with VHB for the amount of $445,000 and $445,400. And it is essentially the second phase of the design. The first phase was the preliminary design that VHB did, and the second phase is the final design. We had originally hoped for this contract to come in the spring. We're a little later than what we had hoped for due to various challenges, particularly the lack of manpower during COVID that the engineering firms across the region all got backed up on. That had been explained to both the Infrastructure Committee and the PEDC Committee, as well as the TIF Advisory Committee over the last few months. And so Tonight is just the continuation of the project where we're hoping to get final design underway. This is one of a few different final design contracts that will be coming before you for adoption to keep the project hopefully on track as much as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Director Cummings? Seeing none, Mr. Clerk, could you please take a roll?
Yes. Alderman Clee.
Yes.
Alderman Como.
Yes.
Alderman Govea.
Yes.
Alderman Clemmons is yes. Alderwoman Timmons.
Yes.
And you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 yeas and 0 nays.
Okay, and that motion passes. Unfinished business.
There is none.
Tabled in committee.
There is none.
New business resolutions.
R2261, approving a proposed cable television franchise agreement renewal between the City of Nashua and Comcast. I would move to recommend final passage.
Director Kleiner, did you want to speak to this?
Good evening, Kim Kleiner, Director of Administrative Services. So back in 2021, Mayor Donchis, working with members of the Cable Television Advisory Board, formed a committee directly for the negotiation of the franchise agreement. Throughout the past year and a half, we have fulfilled all the duties required by the process of negotiating this contract. That included a public hearing, meeting with divisions and directors. It included conducting a public survey, creating a Facebook page, and asking for input on the city website. Discussion at all of the CTAB advisory board meetings, working with Mr. Painter and Mr. Johnson, who may be online tonight,
I do not see them.
to discuss how this affects our CTV group, and then working with all of the various divisions, the Department of Public Works, the Department of Community Development and Emergency Management before the departure of Mr. Cates, to really figure out what is the best way to move forward. It has been brought to our attention that most municipalities are heading towards a longer term agreement. So we have drafted with Comcast a 10-year contract term. That includes the addition of a 4th channel, which will be broadcast in high definition. That will not be for new content per se, but to broadcast some of the highlights of our other 3 channels, 16, 99, 96. Quite often you'll find if you have sports games, the high school games, for instance, those are much better seen in high definition. So we could use that channel kind of as the best programming. An origination point will be in City Hall. We did have other origination points in our past agreement. They were not being used, so they've been removed from the agreement. The franchise will provide to us $250,000 for technology. This will be broken up over the 10 years at $25,000 a year. You'll see if you were reviewing the past contract, the city received that technology money up front at the beginning of the contract. The reason we're not asking for that this time is when you do that, there's actually an interest charge that gets tacked on to the surcharge. We don't see any reason why the city needs to do it up front. So we're eliminating that extra amount to the surcharge agreement. Basically, both Mr. Painter and Mr. Johnson and I and all the members of CTAB that voted on July 22nd have moved this contract forward, and we look for the city's support.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the board? Seeing none, I'm sorry. Alderman Govey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A question through you to Director Kleiner, if possible.
Yes.
So were we happy with the past contract we had with Comcast? Would you say that was a good relationship with them and no reason to change?
Great question. We have been. I think, we have a direct contact, a governmental liaison with Comcast, and he has always been very responsive to the city. They've also helped us in a variety of ways, such as most recently a program with the Arlington Street Community Center to put in internet access services, which is a program that Comcast is trying to create access for those that may not have the means to have it in their home. Comcast does a lot through Comcast Cares Days, and they've really been great in letting us know everything from programming changes to changes within their organization in a very timely manner.
Quick follow-up?
Yes,
That's okay.
please.
Thank you. And then with that being said, is there anybody else who would take on a contract like this? I know it seems like it's pretty easy to go with Comcast here, but just doing the due diligence, is there any other provider that has been approached with this?
No, really, in order to have the infrastructure to do so, there's no other competitor at this moment.
That's what I assumed.
Alderwoman
Thank you.
Wilshire, and then Alderman Jettie.
Director Kleiner, you mentioned that other communities were looking at longer term contracts. What kind of contracts are they looking at?
So, one of the main things about, there's quite a long process when you go through the process for negotiation. I've found one municipality that actually had a 15-year. What we did is we made this a 10-year contract, right? And we didn't change the percentage of the franchise, right? So we're staying at 4%. That is a direct impact to the subscribers, right? They pay that on their bill, and we felt it was important not to raise it. We also realized that the economic conditions change. And we wanted to ensure that the city had the opportunity to change that if we needed to. So if we have worked into this agreement the ability with proper notice to change that franchise amount within the scope of this 10-year contract.
So aren't they always 10-year contracts? Haven't we been doing 10 years?
We have, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Jettie.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm on the Cable TV Advisory Board, and I detected, I may be completely wrong, but I detected in Alderman Gouvea's question what may be a misperception. I know a lot of people have a misperception that the city extends to Comcast a monopoly, that it is an exclusive agreement. It is not. Comcast, inherited or acquired over the years the infrastructure that they currently maintain in the city. Any other entity is able and welcome to come in and establish a cable TV service in the city if they want to. This does not exclude anyone else from doing this. But as Director Kleiner pointed out, it would require a large investment of infrastructure to try to duplicate what Comcast already has. So these are wires that are laid out throughout the city. What we are seeing is at least one other company that is trying to provide internet service in the city. This agreement is limited to cable television. The internet service is not part of this agreement, which is another misconception that people have. And one of the problems we have, and this is, our ability to negotiate is very limited. It all stems from federal law, which is pretty old, outdated, hasn't been changed. It does not include internet like the the fee that we are, the fee that that is charged to the subscribers, and that is limited to cable television subscribers. People who are getting internet without cable TV don't pay that fee at all. And so that's a problem that we envision as people continue to cut the cord, so to speak, eliminate cable television and obtain their TV services through the internet. They are not paying that fee. And so it's limiting the amount of money that is going to be coming into the city as a result of this franchise agreement. So, forgive me if I assumed wrongly, but I know that other people have this misconception about the franchise agreement. It is not exclusive.
Thank you, Alderman Jettie. And before I get to Alderman Camo, who is online, I'd like to state that Alderman Moran has joined us, Alderwoman Kelly has joined us, and Alderman O'Brien is hiding in the background. Alderman Camo?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. With respect to what my colleague from Ward 5 was just talking about, it made me curious, has there been any interest from satellite providers? I know you talked a lot about the cable infrastructure in the city. Do any of the satellite providers have any interest in carrying these channels, or does the city have any interest in offering it to them? Maybe through you, Madam Chair, to Director Kleiner.
Director Kleiner?
I have not been made of any, aware of any. Part of the process when we renegotiate the agreement is to open this up and have a public hearing to do our research and allow people to reach out to us. There has been no contact with either the cable television groups that we deal with throughout many municipalities, or with my division that I'm aware of.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? I just wanted to add to what Alderman Jettie had mentioned. I know even up in the State House, we talked about the reduction of, at least in my committee, we talked about the reduction of cable people as you cutting the strings and putting less and less money, and only a certain group was paying this. I don't know if there's any movement to change that in any way. Are the franchise fees, those are enabling from the state, is that correct? It's not something we say we're going to do. We had to have that enabled from the state, if I'm not mistaken?
I'm not sure I understand enabled through the state. I mean, it's enabled through certainly the FCC and the federal regulations that guide it. I would say that part of this process, to Alderman Jettie's, it's very antiquated. I think we've done a good job this time around, and you might notice that this contract, this agreement, looks very different from our original. That's in thanks to our government liaison and the advisory, who have worked very hard now to kind of eliminate passages that were required by the older agreements and make this a much easier to understand and easier to read agreement. So I think we've worked very hard to try to get it to a point where we are tied in as a city to what we need, and Comcast is receiving what they need, and it's much clearer to the public.
Thank you. Are there any other questions online? I don't see any, and I don't see any in the chamber. Mr. Clerk, could you please take a roll call?
Yes, Alderman Clee.
Yes.
Alderman Como.
Yes.
Alderman Gouveia.
Yes.
Alderman Clemmons is yes. Alderwoman Timmons.
Yes.
Alderman Moran.
Yes.
So that's 6 yeas and 0 nays.
And that passes. Thank you. New business ordinances,
There is none.
record of expenditures.
I would move that the Finance Committee has complied with the city charter and ordinances pertaining to the record of expenditures for the period from September 2nd, 2022 to September 15th, 2022.
Is there any discussion on that? Would you please call the roll?
Yes, I will. Alderman Clee,
Yes.
Alderman Como,
Yes.
Alderman Gouveia,
Yes.
Alderman Clemmons is yes, Alderwoman Timmons,
Yes.
Alderman Moran,
Yes.
and that's 6 yeas and 0 nays.
And that passes as well. And if everybody here who's on the committee, if you could please sign the document. Last I saw it was over that way. I think Alderman Moran needs to sign it as well. So Ms. Linder can leave. General discussion. Seeing none. Second public comment. Again, if you could come up to the mic, give your name, address, and 3 minutes.
Lori Ortolano, 41 Berkeley Street. Ms. Clee, at the last Board of Aldermen meeting, you read a fairly lengthy letter into the record, and I believe on part of that record, you were referring to me. And you stated, well, I believe that we should all speak out when we feel something is wrong, and we should ask those questions when we don't understand something, and we should be willing to listen with an open mind and willingness to work with these individuals who are doing their best to answer their never-ending questions. The problem is when certain individuals seek out to make controversy where there is none, it can stir up anger that can lead to violence. So I've come here repeatedly, probably 5 times, to ask about these elderly exemptions. And nobody's answered my questions. I can't get a response from anyone. And I don't know why I have to ask the same thing so many times, because seniors have called me. Now, this is the exemption level that we put out. The tax bills and the system's going to be frozen next week to print the tax bills for the 15th. In 2018, when we did this, we didn't get ahead of it. And the tax bills were frozen and the bills were mailed. And on November 13th, you had a board meeting where a proposal was ordinance, I can't remember, was proposed on November 13th to up the exemption by 25%. But that was after the seniors all got their bill, and there was quite a panic going on. And it was going to be phased in over 2 years for essentially to get the increase, because we couldn't afford to do it all in 1 year. Now, I've been asking you to prepare for this for months and months, even in the budget season, so that we could do it in 1 year, particularly because this is a year of exceeding hardship. And not one alderman has cared about this. No one has said a word. I ask endlessly. So in 2018, you had exemptions level for 80 and over, 280. Now, KRT, when they did the 2018 update, the average home was 265. The average home this year is about 385, okay? They're up a lot. So for an average home, a senior 80 or over who didn't have any money and was really in hardship could get a full exemption on their property for the average home, a ranch. 75 to 79, 224, 65 to 74, 195. And you got a tax break estimated here, right in the booklet. Your tax rate is going down $1,000 this year, because I suspect the tax rate will drop to about $18. That's what I'm looking at now. And you're gonna see these valuations go up
30
huge.
seconds.
These folks are gonna have $2,000 increases. You don't have the staffing in your assessing office to deal with the problem you just created, because now it's gonna flood an office that's understaffed with only 2 people to deal with all these problems. And I can assure you, they're not well-trained, they don't have a lot of experience, and mistakes are gonna be made, because there was no thinking to get out ahead of this. I've asked the questions 5 times, and Ms. Clee, you think we don't listen. I listen. I'm waiting for a response.
Thank you. Any other members from the public who wish to speak? Seeing none. Remarks by Alderman. Alderman Moran.
Thank you, Madam Chair, woman. My apologies for being late, everyone. I was at St. Christopher's Academy for my 2 daughters' open house, and I do apologize, but I'm glad I was able to make it here for the vote.
Thank you. Family first, always. Any other comments? Alderman Kamal.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to mention this Friday is Battle of the Bridge for the high school football teams. It's North versus South. It's always a great game. Unfortunately, I will still be stuck here in Chicago, so anybody who wants to go down to Stellos and cheer for the starting defensive end, his number is 58. So hopefully they have a good game. Go South, go Panthers.
Are there any other comments? Seeing none, we are going to enter into a possible non-public session. Did everybody, yes, Alderman Moran, could you please sign the? You'll have to read this, I think.
Mm-hmm. You need a second.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, I would move that the Finance Committee go into non-public session by roll call pursuant to RSA 91A:3-2E, consideration or negotiation of pending claims or litigation which has been threatened in writing or filed by or against a public body or any subdivision thereof, or by or against any member thereof because of his or her membership in such public body, until the claim or litigation has been fully adjudicated or otherwise settled. Any application filed for tax abatement pursuing to law with any body or board shall not constitute a threatened or filed litigation against any public body for the purposes of this subparagraph.
By roll call, and we need a second on that.
I second.
And second by Alderman Moran. Yeah. That's okay. And we need to do a roll call on that, please, Mr. Clerk.
Thank you. Alderman Clee,
Yes.
Alderman Como,
Yes.
Alderman Gouveia,
Yes.
Alderman Clemmons is yes, Alderwoman Timmons.
Yes.
And Alderman Moran.
Yes.
And that's 6 yeas and 0 nays.
Okay, and we are going to go into non-public session, so if we need to clear the room with the